And we're back. We're back with Jonathan Taylor, the founder of A Voice for Male Students, a great resource for anyone who wants to learn more about the crisis of boys in education, whether it be in primary, secondary, or post-secondary education. This website is great. Go to avoiceformalestudents.com and check it out. Jonathan is an incredible researcher and an incredible writer and a very passionate man. He's one of my favorite men's rights activists, actually, I must say. He's joining us tonight, and we're going to talk about what's going on in the media when it comes to the issue of sexual assault on campus and the hysteria that's being drawn up. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you fine. So good to have you on.
Excellent.
Good, great.
All right.
So
Thanks
good to have you on tonight. Oh, absolutely. This is something I've noticed just in the past few weeks, and I was going to write an article about it today, but I thought, you know what, maybe I should just get Jonathan to get on the show with us tonight, and we'll talk about it with him because you are more than anybody else as far as when it comes to education and specifically higher education. You're the guy that really is kind of the point man on this, and it's good to have you on.
Well, hey, thanks for having me, and thanks for all of the honors. It's an honor.
Sure.
So yeah,
good, great. Well, it's well deserved, and I really think that your website is the best resource when it comes to people who are curious about what's happening in higher education with male
we've only just begun. Good. Well,
good. to better days. So here's what's happening now as I see it. I see a real uptick in the mainstream media. When I say mainstream media, I mean Time Magazine, the Huffington Post, all kinds of people, and I mentioned Jezebel earlier on from that. That's like a lower tier thing all the way up to Time Magazine. And we're starting to see politicians amp up this whole hysteria. Joe Biden says to colleges, I'm looking at a Time Magazine article right now, Joe Biden says to colleges, step up, it's time. Vice President Joe Biden has voiced his opinion about the sexual assault problem on college campuses across the country. Telling Time that the White House wants to pressure university presidents to figure out a better way to handle claims of rape. Now, this is coming on the heels of some very significant developments that have been going on with the blueprint letters specifically, where the Department of Justice has distanced itself from the Education Department and saying, wait a minute, we don't want to have anything to do with this blueprint letter. This is what FIRE, the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education, has said. And also, we've seen people in the Wall Street Journal. We've seen every single men's rights publication out there speaking out about, in the U.S. at least, speaking out about these things. And people are starting to listen. It's starting to creep into the consciousness, the problems with these things. And the response? This whole amping up of the rape hysteria. And Time Magazine is coming out with the next, and I wish we had the chat room open because I could send everybody a link. The next cover of Time Magazine is going to have a college banner that says rape on it. One of those like sports flags you see. And it's the subtitle is the problem with sexual assault on college campuses. I think that this is pushback to successful activism. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, they really don't have a choice. I mean,
they don't have any other way of going about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we a lot of people have sort of risen to the challenge, so to speak. They're coming out of the woodwork all over the place because they're starting to realize what is really at stake here. We're talking about, fundamental civil rights, and organizations, very prestigious, well-liked organizations like FIRE, Foundation for Individual Rights in Education. They have led the way, and really, we're seeing quite a bit of overreach, and so once there is that pushback, I mean, they really either have to double down, or kind of fade away, and so they really have to just keep this hysteria building all the time, because if they ever like freeze in place and just say, oh well, and do anything like that, they'll basically fall apart. So they have to keep that hysteria going. To a certain extent, I think this might also have to do with the upcoming elections in the United States. Yep. and Vice President or Joe Biden wants to definitely leave his mark. By the way, let's all keep in mind that Joe Biden is a man who authored VAWA, the Violence Against Women Act, despite himself making the claim that he was once abused by his I believe it was his sisters, and once claimed that he had the scars to prove it, but he never really carried that awareness that women can be violent into any of the legislation that he proposed. I mean, I think his credibility is just shot for anyone who bothers to look beneath the surface at all. So I think it's in response to some of the activism and also to the election. It's the tides of politics and things like that. But ultimately, and maybe I'm just looking on the bright side of things, but I think this is going to eventually work in our favor because they've been overreaching for a long time. And I think that, in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see that really start to, backfire in their faces, as we are seeing when students are starting to file lawsuits against these educational institutions.
And this is a big development. This is really making Title IX people run scared. These lawsuits, which are clearly well founded. I mean, what else do you expect these guys to do? They have their lives ruined, and they didn't do anything wrong. And they say, "Hey, listen, I was discriminated against. I didn't have due process. I was accused. I got kicked out of school, and this was bound to happen." I mean, when they came out with the Dear Colleague letter, people predicted accurately that this like in the next 2-3 years there was going to be thousands of these guys who were falsely accused who are going to have their lives totally screwed up. And that's what happened. And now they're suing, and it's like, oh, well, now we have to figure out how to maintain this policy without getting sued. And that's what we're talking about with this the article that I brought.
They can't. And there's something that I would like to bring up about the dynamic of, if you'll allow me to get up on my soapbox about these administrators. You mentioned that Inside Higher Ed is primarily run by and for higher education administrators. And I think I know something about the psychology of these administrators. No administrator really wants to be on the side of either rapists or false rape accusers when they really, think about it and look themselves in the mirror. Well, maybe some of the more extreme feminists, granted, but, in general, but then they have all these career interests which supersede these, their moral perspectives. And to a certain extent, I mean, there have been some cases in the past, and to some extent still today, where administrators may kind of sweep some things under the rug, and on both sides too, whether it's due process issues or sexual assault, but really, these administrators who judge these things, these assistant deans of students, these Title IX coordinators, who are now at risk of being sued by the young men who are getting screwed over by the lack of due process. Increasingly, and here is my prediction, based upon what I have been seeing, increasingly I think we're going to see administrators sort of kind of start to play the victim, because in essence they are damned if they do and damned if they don't. But in my perspective, my response to them would be, the only you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. But the only choice you have to make is whether you want to be damned for the right reason or the wrong one. Well, I mean, does that sound like I'm hitting pretty close to home?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely correct. When talking with administrators and you said something, a thing or two about the psychology of these people, I do too. I used to be one of them. They are very careerist. It is basically their career is seen as a paid vacation that they feel they are entitled to, and they're not stupid people. These are educated people,
right? And
they see what's going on. They know the dilemma, the moral dilemma of the Dear Colleague letter and the Blueprint letter. They know the dilemma that they're placed in because of this, but they know that they are incredibly dependent on this Title IX money.
Yeah, definitely.
Without it, they would not. They wouldn't have a salary. They wouldn't be in business. It's that much of a hammer. And so, what they're going to do is, instead of doing the right thing and saying, "Hey, we really should call our congressmen and alert the courts and everybody and the media saying this is unconstitutional, this is wrong. But no, and it's not just because of this is the way I think it is. It's not just because of the feminist ideology that infuses everything in higher education. It's not just because of the true believerism. I think it's because they know a money train when they see one.
Yeah, definitely.
They know a money train when they see one, and they know that if they just speak up, that it could be all over for them. And if any individual speaks up about it, well, forget that. That guy is going to be done in a week. He's going to be kicked out.
Yeah, these administrators, they have a lot of skeletons in their closet.
Oh,
you've seen me dig some up on some of these guys 2 years ago.
And that's typical. But that's not unusual.
They have to pander to. Title IX coordinators. I think that to a certain degree, I think that it is true, as a lot of men's rights activists claim, that Title IX coordinators are very feminist-oriented, ideology-wise. But it's also true that that Title IX coordinators are also kind of like the office of CYA. Cover your ass. And they
absolutely, that's their whole MO. They have to be that way.
Yeah, and so they have to keep that money train flowing very always flowing.
Their
basically.
job is to make sure they comply so the school gets their money, and it's a lot of money for every school. It's a huge hammer. It's an intimidating one. I mean, when the DOE says something about Title IX, everybody. That's a huge thing. Every administrator at every school, no matter what you do, it's like, wait a minute, Title IX funding? That's like a third of our whole budget. That's not unusual for a community college or anything like that.
Yeah.
And most colleges simply cannot operate without their Title IX funding.
I want to go back to that Inside Higher Ed article that you were reading from and just clarify a few points based upon my experience in research in higher ed. Do you mind if I do that real quick?
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you mentioned at one point that the maximum number an institution can be fined under the Clery Act. Remember, the Clery Act is the act that requires universities to publish in their campus crime statistics the number of crimes, especially violent crimes, that were reported to have taken place on campus. The 35,000 number mark is technically true, but to clarify, they can be fined 35,000 for each singular crime or report of a crime that they leave out of the statistics. And that all comes from like student services, student aid. It doesn't come out of the administrators' pockets
it comes out of the actual student services.
Yeah.
They actually work at the school. They're not going to be harmed by that, but the students will be harmed by that. And this is something I've seen all the time too. If you're an undergraduate, especially if you're an undergraduate, your school doesn't care about you. They don't care about.
And of course, these universities are not required to. If you look at the campus crime statistics, it just lists the number of claims that are reported, not the ones that are eventually found out to be true or false. But sorry for going down that road, but I just
not at all.
Clear up that.
Okay. Anyway, listen, we have Jonathan Taylor here with us. Please call in. James, can you give him the number?
Yeah, the number's 214-666-6148.
Great. Do we have any callers yet, James?
No. Okay. We just gave out the number.
Yeah, people are just Skyping me telling me to give out the number. Yes, but anyway, let's...
I have a topic that I can talk about at any time.
Go ahead.
By the way.
Sure.
Well, okay, so we have seen in the past, in the last year or so, a significant uptick in the number of cases by young men, usually young men, who allege, who are starting to make legal challenges that they have been unfairly treated and denied due process in higher education institutions when accused, in their perspective, wrongly accused of sexual misconduct. And yes, this is we've seen a huge uptick on this in the last year, and we are starting to see attorneys come out. Like I'm looking at an article where there's an attorney named Mike Kaiser, who is a criminal defense attorney. I think he's in the northeast of the U.S., around the area where you live, Bob. But anyway, who are actually coming out and saying, yes, I will represent these cases.
Sure.
And And, some of them are being dismissed, but then some of them are making their way. There's one that's made its way up to the state Supreme Court, I think. And there's some I need to look at more closely. But here's a trend that I think we need to pay close attention to, because the more legal challenges that are made, the more legal successes that are made in behalf of the wrongly accused, that's all going to start snowballing over the next couple of years. And once a legal precedence is set, that's what we've really needed over the past couple of years, is a new legal precedent.
Yep.
Then lawyers are going to start coming out of the woodwork, and some of them are going to start sniffing a new source of money.
Let them go at it. That's what I say.
Exactly. And for our listeners, just to give a sense of framework, in case you haven't heard this before, schools are able to get away with these insane sexual misconduct policies because the judicial system has previously just kind of turned a blind eye to what higher education administrators have been doing, because they have been adjudicating simple things like plagiarism or underage drinking, things like that. They haven't been
in whatever simple drug offenses or whatever,
They haven't been investigating things like felony sexual assault and pretending to be any kind of experts on these things. So they've really taken that inch that the judicial system has given them and run a mile with it. And what we really need are a set of new legal precedents which clearly define the limits of their power. And once that happens, we're going to start seeing a lot of people like those lawyers come out of the woodwork. And then I think, and just to kind of give you a heads up of something, I don't want to oversell or overpromise this idea that I have, but I'm thinking of making sort of a reference or a resource for attorneys who would specialize or who would dedicate part of their career to this kind of thing, where students can look up those attorneys by state. And so, I think that, given the fact that my website, avoiceformalestudents.com, it's actually doing very well in terms of web rankings, in terms of traffic, and that will be, once those legal challenges reach and legal precedents start to reach critical mass, we'll hopefully be able to just catch them as they fall, maybe into our lap where we've been waiting for them. Maybe I'm making it seem too easy, but that's just kind of
it may just be that easy.
Maybe.
Anyway, we have a caller. Jack Barnes, a.k.a. Night Runner, is with us tonight. Jack, how you doing tonight?
Doing fine. How are you, Robert?
Doing pretty good. Nice to hear your voice. I missed your radio show last night, but I'm glad you called in tonight. What's going on?
Jonathan, I believe I sent you an email here not long ago about some consent policies on a few college campuses here in the U.S. that were very interesting.
Yeah, and, one was Vassar, one was another, I forget.
Yeah, the University of Texas at Austin was one. Loyola Marymount or something like that. Anyway, our next radio show, which will be on Monday night, this coming Monday, is going to be about those consent policies. We're going to dig in and expose those consent policies. It's absolutely insane what is in those policies, what these college students are having to go by in order to just have sex.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I have a question.
Yeah.
These guys on college campuses who are unfortunately already there, if they were to have sex with a woman who is not a member of their university and doesn't attend their university, and the sexual activity took place off of college campus, would they still be under this dear colleague letter if she decided to make a false rape allegation?
Maybe not under the Dear Colleague letter specifically, but under that particular university guidelines, it really depends upon how the university wants to treat it. Because if you go back and look at books like Sexual Assault on Campus, which is written by two feminists, they actually go back and uncover cases just like that that occurred in the 1990s. I can't give you the page number offhand, but I can definitely tell you that book has some interesting cases like that in it. I think the authors are Doctors Carol Balmer and Andrea Perot. I researched that for a video that I did a while back. But yes, there are such cases, and I think it's important to remember that a lot of the time, I think we put a lot of emphasis on the definitions of sexual misconduct, and that is very important. But I think we also have to remember that a lot of the time, I mean, these administrators can do whatever they want. They really can, because to a certain extent, and I have this philosophy, which I think everyone who goes to higher education, who attends it, and especially if they hope to work in there one day, that they should know, and that is this: the rules that matter the most are the ones that are not written down. If you are an athlete,
totally.
Yeah, if you are an athlete, then you can and oftentimes will be held to a higher, well, not in all cases, but you can and sometimes are held to a higher standard. As we saw recently, the Huffington Post reported, although their framing was a little bit different, how. Well, actually, no. I'm sorry. In some cases, these athletes have been, just expelled or summarily suspended simply because they're athletes and they're held to a higher standard, and that's not written anywhere in the on anything coming from, say, the assistant dean of students office or the dear colleague letter, but it is nonetheless something that the administration enforced. So really, the guidelines, the rules for education policy, they're really kind of like a ball of wax. The problem is that the people who have this ball of wax and who can mold it to their will, they're people who already have a lot of vested interests, very few of which, if any, really work in favor of the accused. So to answer your question in brief, yes, there are some cases. I don't have a list of them, but I can give you that resource, Sexual Assault on Campus by Drs. Carol Baumer and Andrea Perot. I think those authors are correct. And but just looking to the larger picture, which is basically administrators can do whatever the hell they want because there's no checks and balances. So, hope that answers
I
your
was
question.
just trying to figure out if these guys would be safe, going off college campus to find a girlfriend. It sounds like to me, from my perspective, if I was on a college campus right now, I would invest in some tube socks, Vaseline, and free porn. I mean,
well, you know what?
You don't have to buy dinner. You don't have to cuddle with it. And if she starts getting on your nerves, you just hit the mute button.
Well, I think there's something to be said for not necessarily celibacy, but definitely being more judicious. And I think that's something that really men need to be more judicious in who they sleep with and how quick they are to jump in bed with people. I don't say that to think for their benefit. I mean, I think we need to come to terms with that and really have some kind of awakening in that regard. But yeah, I definitely, I agree with you.
Well, I have nephews now. I have about 5 nephews who are all at the same time entering college age right now. They're all like 17, 18, 19 years old. And they're getting the talk from Uncle Bob. It's like, hey, invest in a nice recording device, and here's what you're up against. If just by engaging in sex, this is what you're facing. If there's any kind of accusation or anything like that, you're not just your school career, but your life can be ruined. And I have one nephew who is an athlete. He's playing basketball in high school right now, and he might get a scholarship because he's that good. And it's interesting you talk about the double standard with athletes. That's one of those things where I don't think it's just feminism that's concerned. It's also like the whole TradCon thing where, you're supposed to be a leader. You're supposed to be an example for everybody. So you're going to be held to a higher standard where that plays against them as well. And of course you have like the whole feminist, the whole like sports thing. That's like patriarchal oppression where men who play sports are like, these guys, that makes them feel they have entitlement over women and stuff like that. It's like, wait, I'm just playing basketball. I'm just playing football. What the heck?
Yeah,
that's it. That's all I'm doing here. That's all I'm doing here. I'm on a scholarship. I'm no different from any other student besides this one thing because I'm good at it. That's it. And it's just such a terrible thing for athletes to have to put up with. It really is. It's got to be incredibly difficult for athletes.
Yeah, and that thing that you referenced about TradCon saying, they should be men, they should, since they are men, they should take responsibility.
Yeah, even though they didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
They should sort of cover for this woman's bad decision making and take and take one on the chin for her, or fall on the sword for her, because that's the man thing to do, and it's kind of stupid.
Yeah, Casey Johnson wrote about that a little bit in his book Until Proven Innocent, about the 3 young men falsely accused at Duke University. So that's another good source for that, to see that kind of mentality, because he quotes those faculty members directly on that. Right. So
anyway, Jack, do you have any more questions for Jonathan? We have some other callers on the line.
No. No, I appreciate Bob. I appreciate you having me on, Jonathan. It was great to talk to you, and we'll catch you guys later.
Thanks,
Jack.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for calling in. All right, so who do we have next? We have Iron John on again.
Yeah, Iron John will be coming live on the air here in just a second.
All right, great.
All right, Iron John, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you guys doing this evening?
Hi, John. How you doing? Nice to hear your voice.
Nice to hear yours too, Bob. My question for Jonathan is, I've been to his website and he seems to be very well organized. So I'm wondering, you must have done a lot of research on the colleges and universities across the United States. Have you come across any records as to how many of these student tribunals young men are facing each year and what the outcomes are?
Oh, as in how many actual adjudication processes are taking place on average per university? Is that your question?
Yeah. So.
No. Yeah. I actually, to be perfectly clear, no, actually, I haven't, because a lot of these procedures are really shrouded in secrecy, and that's another dangerous element of these bureaucratic proceedings is that
no accountability.
There's no accountability. Unlike, public trials, the whole Sixth Amendment thing, the right to publicly face one's accuser, that just doesn't happen in higher education. I mean, you're summoned in, sometimes, the student is accused, they're summoned in, they may not even know they're accused. The administrator can just sit there and start fishing, for whatever, and then the next thing you know, well, they've got their...
It truly is Kafkaesque. It truly is.
It sounds just like the family court systems. It's like they took the family court systems and put them right into college.
And all this is in the name of the victim. We have to protect the quote victim.
So
the alleged victim becomes the victim automatically, and they have to do everything to protect the victim, and that means taking away the rights of the accused. But the rights of the accused are what we have based our judicial system on anciently, truly anciently. But now none of that seems to matter anymore.
Right.
It's all
and there may be a way in which you can roughly triangulate that number. For example, if you look at the campus crime reports, under the Clery Act, which we discussed earlier, universities are supposed to maintain rigorously correct numbers in regards to how many sexual assaults are reported. And now under the April 4th, 2011 Dear Colleague letter from the Department of Education, they are now obligated to independently and come to their own conclusions, research or investigate and adjudicate every single claim. They're no longer allowed to say, well, it looks like we could do something here, but maybe not here. No, they really have to, provided that the accuser is willing to participate, they really have to, go the extra mile on their due diligence. And so you may be able to calculate a rough figure based upon the number of accusations and say, well, maybe about 2/3 or half of those. I can't give you an exact number because I'm just not privy to those numbers because so much of the process is shrouded in secrecy. But I would say, I could make a guess, educated guess, maybe a half, maybe half of those actually, or to 2/3 actually result in some kind of bureaucratic process. But that's an educated guess. That's the best I can say. Sorry.
Well, I appreciate your guess. Go ahead, Bob.
I was going to say this is like another extension of the whole mandatory prosecution and mandatory arrest philosophy of VAWA. It's this idea where you don't have a choice. If someone makes an accusation, you have to spend the money, you have to spend the time, you have to do all this. And what it is really at its base is it's a way to keep the money flow going towards these apparati rather, that are there in place, and they involve students. They also involve administrators, through which money flows. It just flows, and it's not just money; it's political power. It's this idea. Here's the thing about due process: the idea of due process is there as a boundary to control by the powers that be. It is the boundary that the powers that be face when they want to do something to somebody else. So just by power's very nature, power abhors boundaries. They're just going to want to go after that whole thing. It's just if you can understand what I'm saying, maybe you understand, maybe you don't. But it's this whole doing away with due process and getting money while doing it is such a powerful formula for a real malignant degradation of basic individual rights.
If I can back up your point there, Robert, with a case or a case example, I interviewed a Title IX coordinator. I think you remember this one back in 2011, 2012. Yeah, 2011. 2012. Sorry, April 2012. And I remember later. Yeah, I later publicized that recording. It was about an hour-long conversation. I was able to gather a lot of insight on the nature of higher education, of Title IX coordinators and higher education administrators in general. But we were talking about the April 4th Dear Colleague letter from the Department of Education, and we were going over all of the rules and regulations. And one of the things about the Dear Colleague letter is that it contains a certain amount of shoulds, as in higher education administrators should do these things. There are several strong suggestions, and then after that are some areas where the Dear Colleague letter says, well, you can kind of do these things if you want to. I was talking to Michelle Vieira, Title IX coordinator at A&M University at Commerce, one of their satellite campuses, and she told me that the way she did it, and the way numerous Title IX coordinators did it, was that they do basically everything. They definitely do the should do's. They also do the strong suggestions, and they also do the you cans if you want to's, that element. So they take any moderate suggestion that the Department of Education makes, and they take it to the extreme just to make sure they're doing their due diligence to CYA, keep their money flowing in. So any suggestion that the Department of Education makes, they are going to take it to its most extreme. and that's going to be the natural and normative state of affairs. So to kind of back up your point, Robert, about how how essentially hungry for power a lot of these institutions are by their very nature. I mean they're driven to take that power, to take on these powers for themselves, also just to protect themselves.
Right.
So they are hungry by nature for devouring more and more power and more rights of the accused. That's how they're set up.
Interesting how it plays out. So John, do you have any other questions for us?
Yes, just one more, please. I was wondering, Jonathan, have you seen that department, I believe it's Department of Justice website, notalone.gov? And if you had, I was wondering what your take on it was from, I suppose, a men's issues red pill perspective. What do you think that its purpose is, and what might be the real motive behind it?
I took a cursory look at it a little while ago. I think a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. I think it's rather telling that it's structured almost like a Tumblr blog. It's almost like a Tumblr feminist wrote it, and they just copied it over. But as far as reviewing it thoroughly, I wish I had gotten around to it. To the point where I could be able to answer your question, but I just I wasn't able to thoroughly look at this one just yet, so I'm afraid I can't answer that. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, sorry to disappoint, but I think that it's important to, if you're going to be an expert in anything, it's more about always being curious and inquisitive and acknowledging the limitations of expertise, and then knowing that you have to push beyond that, not always appearing to have the answer for everything. So, I hope that helps.
Fair enough.
Okay, John, go ahead. We got another caller on, but if there's anything else you wanted to ask or say, then let us know what else is on your mind.
Oh, no, that was it. I just wanted to say thanks for taking my call, and I'm enjoying the program.
Great. Hey, thanks, John.
Thanks.
Always a pleasure having Iron John on the show. Great caller, and always. Now we have another good one. Pine Tree, you with us?
Hold on, but if there's anything else you wanted to ask or say...
Pine Tree, you're on the air. Go ahead and turn your speaker down, man.
Oh, no, that was it. I just wanted to say thanks for taking my call, and I'm enjoying the program.
Oh, wow.
Great, thanks, man. Thanks. Always a pleasure having Iron John on the show. Great caller. And
Pine Tree.
Now we actually have another great Pine Tree with us.
Hey, go ahead.
But if there's anything else you wanted to ask or say... Pine Tree, you're on the air. Go ahead and turn your speaker down, man.
Oh, my God.
Oh, no, that was it. I just wanted to say thanks for taking my call.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Welcome to the comedy portion of it.
Yeah, right.
We have just hit gold. Pine Tree, you have got to turn those speakers off, man.
Hi guys, can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Turn your speakers off, dude.
Oh god, I'm having issues here.
Well,
yeah, sounds like it. It's okay.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah,
call,
we can hear you
call us
fine.
back when you turn your speakers off, man, all right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, Pine Tree, please call us back when your speakers are turned off and we get that worked out. James, do you have another caller? Sorry, Pine Tree. I hate doing that, but it's just it was cool.
That was yeah, that's the first time I think we've really had a taste of that.
Yeah.
Over to Live 365.
Well, it's bound to happen, you know.
Yeah.
So,
in 128-bit, great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or however much it is.
Stereo,
or byte.
or less.
Yeah, James, who else do we have on the air? Or who else do we have on the phone?
This is it, man. You're talking to him.
All right, well, okay. People, call in. The phone number is... What's the phone number, James?
214-666-6148. If you don't call in, Robert says he's going to be forced to release pictures of me in a gold tutu, golf, a small sock, and nothing else.
Dude, I mean, you guys saw my Schrodinger's rapist photo, haven't you?
I have not.
I think that this might actually top that. You know. Anyway. Again, the phone number is darn it. I don't have it written.
214-666-6148.
Yes, please call in. Hungry for you, Carls. We know we have people out there listening. Unfortunately, we do not have a chat room tonight because the chat room server is based in the Ukraine. Apparently, there's a huge storm going on over there. Aside also from a war going on, I guess. But it's not available tonight, unfortunately. But please do call in. We're looking forward to your calls. Pine Tree, if you're still there, please call in and join us.
Hey,
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, just throw this out there. Has anyone heard of that that incident of group sex at in Belgium, Collège Saint-Michel, Saint Michael's College? We'll use the English pronunciation.
We got a caller.
Okay, we can come back to my story.
The sandwich is on the line, folks.
Okay, great. Sandwich Ice is on. Yeah, Sandwich Ice from Nova Scotia.
Okay.
How you doing?
Hey guys, how are you?
Doing pretty good, Sandwich Ice. How are things going?
Doing great. Just the usual. And I wanted to go back about the whole Times Magazine and the frantic ramping up of the whole rape thing. Mm-hmm. It looks like some kind of typical spoiled brat behavior whenever they get told no and they don't get their way. Suddenly they just throw a fit and go into overdrive. And we're basically saying that with the whole movement, right?
Well,
you or me?
Yeah.
Robert? Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, please, go ahead, John.
Well, I mean, there is this sense that I think we have this sense that to a certain, this is very distinctive to feminists, but I think it's also a general problem with our culture as well, that we have this idea that every time someone makes an accusation, that they should, quote unquote, find justice, no matter how right or how wrong they are. Whereas in a realistic world that prizes due process, that's just not going to happen. In a world that wants to secure the future and the well-being of people who are wrongly accused. And so I think Pierce Harlan over at Community of the Wrongly Accused, Cotwa, COTWA.info, an excellent resource for the wrongly accused everywhere, as well as in higher education. He often recites Blackstone's formula that it's better for several guilty people to go free than it is for one innocent person to be wrongly convicted. And that is something that has guided English and, to a large extent, Western jurisprudence for hundreds of years. But
one of the cornerstones of Western jurisprudence.
Right, right, exactly. And feminism has very much thrown this by the wayside. Not only do they believe that every accuser is always telling the truth and only lies whenever she recants and says, I wasn't raped, not only do they
she didn't really lie. She was
right.
She still avoids some.
Yeah, she was pressured by the patriarchy to do it.
Yeah, and they try to get help for these people,
Yeah, so there was this. A lot of these cases where I think there's about 55 schools, higher education, universities and such that are being investigated by the Department of Education in behalf of the accusers. Who claim that they were victimized and their institutions did nothing. A lot of these cases really seem to be cases where they just thought that they could just make an accusation and that everything would just fold over in front of them, and so what they're really addressing, it seems to be, in these cases where they allege that they were treated unfairly, are sort of the minority of cases where they actually afforded the students a modicum of due process and didn't just summarily wreck their lives and suspend them, expel them. So to a certain extent, that it really is kind of like I didn't get my way, so now I'm gonna and no doubt there are some who are genuine victims in there, but there's also definitely some of them who are less than honest, in their victim status. So I think there's something to be said for the claim. So
going back to what you're saying about the presumption of innocence and the the Blackstone principle, the Blackstone doctrine. There are many. I've seen this in writing before, and it's seen in interviews all the time with feminists. They'll actually come out and say it. They'll say, "Oh, because it's so rare, it's okay that innocent men are going to jail." Because it's so rare that they go to jail. And really, if they were accused of something, they were probably guilty of something anyway. They'll actually say those two things, which fly in the face of that doctrine. And it's so bold-faced, and it's so pathetically bold-faced, and it's enraging when I hear that. When I hear that, I'm like, all right, that turns the entire jurisprudence ethic on its head when you say that. Literally.
Well, here's the thing. You have to remember that we look at the law, we look at jurisprudence, and we see these traditions that should be upheld out of purely philosophical concerns. It's not even a ethics. It's a matter of morality.
Mm-hmm. Objective morality, might I interject.
A lot of these people who think this way would not apply the same standard regardless of the crime involved.
Mm-hmm.
It is a completely different line of thought when it comes to the way that we should be practicing with the judicial system.
Right.
So in some cases, it's almost when you talk about how these people are not willing to keep innocent people out of jail. Well, to them, the way we think is alien or wrong or any of those other things. I'm not trying to be
a threat to them.
I'm not trying to be relativistic here either. I'm just pointing out the fact that these people would apply it to a lot more than just sexual assault or rape if they had their choice.
I think that's their ultimate goal. I think that's just
they consider the entirety of Western thought in and of itself to be patriarchal, to be evil, to be
the idea of individualist protecting the individual and an individual's rights, especially if they're accused of wrongdoing.
Exactly. To them, there is no salvation except collective salvation.
Right.
Pine Tree, you still there? Hello, Pine Tree. Yeah, still there. Okay, great. Sorry, we went off on a rant there. We didn't mean to forget you. What else is on your mind? Give us another question.
Yeah, I was kind of trying to get my thought on this. It seemed to be a a kind of, I'll say, a group as an extreme case of groupthink or an extreme case of what is it? The extreme feminine mind in a way where it's there's the kind of trying sorry where it would not happen to her, like she's the princess and the false accusation would never be toward her. It would always be toward a bad guy, and there's only bad men around her.
I think I see what you're saying. Like, very similarly in the legal system, we have tended to presume that men tend to be, I don't know if I'm articulating this very correctly, but we tend to make excuses and kind of coddle women in their behavior. We tend to rationalize ways of seeing them as angelic, whereas with men we tend to say that, oh well, they're more passive. If they ever do anything wrong, it's not because they did anything wrong; it's because they are afflicted with some kind of malady. Whereas with men, by contrast, we treat them as though they're always full agents of every action that they take, that every action that they take, it is done as an act of deliberacy and of self-interest. So yeah, I mean, that I think reaches back into very much a traditionalistic, perspective on gender. So I don't think it's necessarily a feminine way of looking at the world distinctively, but I think that, both sexes have tended to kind of, put femininity and or definitely female sexuality up on a pedestal over male sexuality. So
beyond reproach, beyond accountability, making excuses all the time for bad behavior. It's just something that we do for women, and that's something that's old as hell.
I see it as uniquely postmodern in its uniquely postmodern. And just to continue on with the base idea, what would happen if all of a sudden a woman came up on these charges? Are they going to hold her in the same to the same star court? I mean, this is what happens all of a sudden if cases start popping up where they're going to have to apply this preponderance of the evidence standard, and women are being charged with sexual assault. How's that going to work for them?
We've basically seen that happen already. With who was it? There was this girl, two lesbians that had a relation, and one of them was underage, and you saw everybody go up in arms and protest, and it's about homophobia and blah, blah, blah.
That was through the criminal courts. What I'm talking about is what happens with this new standard, as defined by the Dear Colleague letter, in colleges. What happens then?
That'll be interesting to see if it will actually happen at all, especially considering all the propaganda about rape just being men raping women and never the other way around, right? So women can't rape men, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
so
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, they probably have no idea that it could go both ways.
I think that if a woman is accused of raping a man, that is, I am getting that's the center of what we're arguing or discussing here, right? Like if a woman is accused and if those standards are applied to her,
right?
I can almost guarantee that that the feminist media is going to ignore it because it just doesn't.
They'll either ignore it, or if it's big enough, like if somebody's penis gets cut off, as when we've seen this before, it's either turned into a big, huge media joke, or you see this in comment sections all the time, and also kind of like on lower tier Jezebel feministing type publications, where they will actually accuse the victim of being a rapist or something like that. It's just there's an army of people that will come to the defense of any woman who's accused of any kind of wrongdoing, sexual wrongdoing. It's just they're out there. They're coming to your rescue.
That's claimed she was drunk.
Mm-hmm. What?
Oh, I said she will just claim that she was drunk and therefore she can't.
Yeah,
she could just do that.
Or just because she was drunk, the other guy's responsible for it. Right. This idea that women who drink of their own volition and then have sex with a man of their own volition are somehow victims simply because they of their own volition drank a couple beers and made a decision they would not have made had they been sober. And so this guy has to pay for this decision in the worst way possible. He is accused of being a rapist. He's kicked out of school, and in some states now you can get thrown in jail under those circumstances. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. But this is the kind of thing we do.
Now, I think that there should be some space made in the discussion for male victims of sexual assault. I think that is an important part of the discussion. What happens when they get injected into the conversation is that feminists then take that and then sort of try and twist that to their own purposes. Like, for example, if feminists I've heard feminists make the claim that 1 in 5 women are raped and then 1 in 33 men are raped on college campuses, right. And then they will use the incidence of the number of men who are raped and then use that in an argument to try and say, hey men, you see you are raped too, therefore the extremely low standards of evidence that I am proposing to deal with sexual assault accusations, they should be supported by you too. When in reality, the reality is that at the end of the day, 99% of those people, 99.9 of the people who are going to be accused are going to be men. So the reality is that, that due process standard really is applied, really against one sex right now.
There's no doubt, right.
And feminists will, they'll it's really a sense of the values don't matter. They'll play both sides of the fence so long as it always gives more power to women. It really, the arguments, the logic of it, there really is no logic of it because it all conforms to this one goal of increasing the power of women without endpoint. So.
Yeah, and this is why they work so hard at discrediting male victims all the time.
Sure, that's one of the reasons why they work so hard in discrediting male victims. That's correct. You're absolutely right. So, Sandwich Heist, tell us what's going on up in Nova Scotia. What's happening up there? You guys doing anything up there lately, or?
We're looking into a few things, but right now we're mostly preparing for the big Detroit conference.
Right, cool. How many people are going there from Nova Scotia?
I know of 2 people already, 2 guys. So I hope to be included. I hope to see you guys over there, whoever will be at the conference.
Yeah, I'll see you guys.
Make it. Sorry, are you coming, Jonathan?
Yeah, I just
sweet, awesome.
Just today I got with my boss and got a spot off. I won't be able to. I will very likely not be able to make Dr. Warren Farrell's workshop that Thursday, even though I would really want to. But work circumstances being what they are, I will definitely make it out there that Friday. Barring death or destruction, I will be there.
I'm definitely going to try to make it there. It's going to be great seeing everybody. It's going to be so cool. I can't wait for it.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be history. We're going to be living history, Robert.
Yep. Man. I know. It's going to be cool. Sandwich Heist, you still there with us?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I'm going to have to go. So, nice talking with you guys. We'll see you later.
Yeah. Great seeing you.
Great. Looking forward to seeing you again. Or looking forward to talking again and looking forward to seeing you in person in June. All right, man. Thanks a lot for calling as always.